Let's talk TCL 30XE 5G, because when I did my original first impressions of this device, I had gotten it right alongside the OnePlus Nord N20. I was kind of comparing it in my head to the N20, using them at the same time. If you had gotten them on the deals, and the deal is still going for the TCL 30XE, you're talking $0, so I wasn't really taking into account the fact that this at regular retail price is almost $100 less than the N20. But I kind of separated from that. For the long-term review, I looked at it in its own little world, what it provides you for $190. And of course, T-Mobile, Metro PCS, you're going to get those deals where you could get this for $0 with the 2-year contract. But there's a lot to like here. And I am really impressed with what TCL was able to do at sub $200. And you make compromises for that, because this is the real world. You don't get everything for nothing. There's going to be some corners cut, or there's going to be some specs that you think aren't quite up to par when it comes to the glass, when it comes to the resolution, a couple other things that we'll talk about. But at the end of the day, you're comparing this and you're saying sub $200, and the usability and the features that just a few years ago, less than a few years ago, a couple years ago, were reserved for flagship devices, and how smoothly this runs and what it can do in terms of battery life. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the video. You have one of these and you're struggling with your battery life? Wait until the end of the video, and I think I could double it. I'm not kidding. We'll talk about that. So, all right, let's go over the TCL 30XE long term. We're talking a month plus now. This screen, the 90 hertz, is really nice. This is a fantastic, and I'm going to show the picture now. This was taken on an S22 Ultra in direct sunlight. And I mean direct sunlight. Sun overhead on top of the screen, and to where the S22 Ultra was struggling to get the photo. This was perfectly readable. It was a fantastic LCD. It got bright enough. The colors are good, but I was able to read this in direct sunlight without any issue, which to me, on a sub $200 device, when you're talking an LCD, is pretty darn good. The 90 hertz runs well. Yeah, okay, this is where we're going to get to the first kind of corner cut. 720p display. Not getting full HD, you're not getting 1080p, but you're getting the 90 hertz on the 720. And for most tasks that you're going to be doing on this device, on a screen this size, it's not a small screen, but you're not talking a 40-inch television. The 720p is okay. It gets sharp enough for text when you're scrolling Twitter, when you're looking at Instagram. It doesn't really feel like you're counting pixels. It feels like you're just sitting there enjoying the screen. And there's something to be said for that. The colors get reasonably, there's contrast there. They get relatively punchy. It's a nice panel on a sub $200 device. And when you add the smoothness of the 90 hertz, it feels quite nice. And the other thing that I like that they added to this is 180 hertz touch sampling. So it does feel, the panel feels really responsive to your finger, in contrast to something like the $450 Samsung A53, which feels like you have to drag your finger across the screen for it to do anything for an hour and a half before it actually responds to your touch. This one actually feels snappy and responsive, and I've been loving the experience with that so far. So I think that even though it's a 720p panel, and that's where they cut a corner to get you sub $200, you're not really missing out on a whole heck of a lot. Performance. The Dimensity 700, I've been really impressed with it. MediaTek has absolutely stepped up their game. I know there was a lot of chatter about people saying, oh, it's not a Snapdragon, it can't do this, it can't do that. Listen, this thing runs just fine. The fact that it could push 90 hertz, I understand it's only rendering 720, so it's not like it's overly demanding. But the fact that it could push the 90 hertz, keep the performance where it's at, you're not going to feel like you're on a budget device, which is great. It's going to do, like you saw the scrolling of Twitter there a few moments ago. We'll boot up Instagram and we'll scroll nice and smooth. You don't feel like you're on a budget device. You don't feel like it's running one of those Helio, the old P whatevers they happen to be, 35s, they felt a little slow. This doesn't feel that way. You feel like you're going to get decent performance. The gaming isn't going to be the best, but it's possible. And you are getting it running at 90 hertz. When you're talking about Pokemon Go, I was able to pull it up earlier. I had some issues, but it goes into the game mode. But for the most part, it was okay. There's going to be the stutter or two, but you're still going to be able to catch Pokemon. You're still going to be able to play those games at medium settings. Your Call of Duties. Someone gave asked about Dead by Daylight, which I don't play, but you should be fine with that. And just don't get greedy with the settings. See, we're in here. Let's catch a Pokemon right now. We'll catch this hop up here. No issues, right? We're right in. It flew up on me, so we're going to be embarrassed live. But we hit it, and we're able to catch it, and you see it's relatively smooth. So performance, I don't think you're going to be disappointed there. The Dimensity 700 runs just fine. TCL UI 3.0, I've been relatively pleased with. You can see it's somewhat simple. There's some of the T-Mobile bloatware that goes on there, but you're able to remove that relatively quickly. But it's clean. I like the way they do it. I like the icons. I like the options. I just like the overall feel of it. Updates, it's running the March 2022 security patch. Am I expecting every month? No. Am I expecting once a quarter? Yeah. But don't forget, that was acceptable for flagship level devices only 2 years ago. Samsung, until they decided that they wanted to go crazy with support, was only giving you updates once a quarter. And that was for devices they were charging you, what, $9,000, $1,100 for? So the fact that that's come to the quarterly kind of updates is come to phones sub $200, I think is okay, because it wasn't that long ago that for sub $200 devices, if you got an update once every 6 months, if you got an update at all, you were doing pretty well for yourself. So I think it's fantastic that at least we get some support, and I think it's relatively clean. I think you're going to be somewhat happy with that. Snappy fingerprint sensor, responsive on the back, quite nice, no issues there. Let's talk camera. I'll put them up. The images are good. Is stuff getting a little blown out on the side because of the overload of light? Yeah, okay, so some of the images get a little blown out. But at the end of the day, I think you're going to be just fine. It's a representative image. It's nice. It's relatively detailed. The color's good. In bright light and good light, you're going to be just fine. You're not going to have any issues, especially on a device when, there's devices that are more expensive than this that don't do that well. A lot of the Moto devices at $200 and $300 really struggle with color. And I think a lot of those devices come in washed out when you're talking the camera. But you can see here, no issues with that. Nice image. I think you're going to be just fine, especially when you think, you got to come back to that theme. Devices should absolutely be judged on what the companies are charging for it. And when you're talking $190, you get a heck of a lot here. So the fact that it has a functional camera that you can actually get a decent image out of is pretty darn good. So let's get to battery life, because that was the main concern that I had when I did my initial impressions, because I had everything on. I had 5G on, I had the brightness all the way up, I had 90 hertz on, and I was getting destroyed. And it made no sense. I believe it's like a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, if not more. And the Dimensity 700 is relatively power efficient. We're not talking a 1080p display. We're not talking anything intensive, power hungry, eating away at the battery life. So the 3.5, 4 hours was confusing the heck out of me. And then I said, you know what? Like we had that video yesterday talking about the S22 Ultra and turning off 5G. T-Mobile, at least. And, I've liked T-Mobile a heck of a lot more than I've liked AT&T. Whenever carrier services are downloaded from AT&T, it just completely nerfs what you're able to do on a device. It takes all the settings, all the mobile network settings away from you when you have an AT&T device. So kudos to T-Mobile for all their problems with Magenta Max and all the other nonsense that they have going around. And unfortunately, in the United States, you got three people you're choosing from. It's going to have to be the lesser of three evils. But at least you can get by, because despite 5G being just forced upon us, there's some options, like with this one. I'm going to show you now. Want to increase your battery life on your TCL 30XE? Go ahead, go into settings, go to mobile networks at the top. Go ahead, mobile network, you jump in there and go to network mode. Get that to focus on there. Network mode. And the one that I choose is to turn off 5G, right? Turn off 5G LTE. Go right here to this one. LTE, 3G, 2G. Don't be alarmed. It'll take a second. It'll cycle through. It'll seem like you've lost connection. You start to panic and just go back to the original one. Don't do that. Let it go, and it'll go back to 4G LTE. You'll get strong signal. It'll be just as fast. And instead of the 3.5, 4 hours of screen on time that I was getting with 5G on, 7 hours of screen on time. 7. 7, you would just be sitting there with 5G on and just doing absolutely nothing with just this phone in your pocket and just watching the battery percentages tick away. It was nuts. So, 5G is a conversation for another day. We've had videos on it. I don't think it provides any benefit right now. 4G LTE, how fast can you load up the pages? Really? How fast can you web surf? Pretty fast right now. I know a lot of people are saying sometimes the bandwidth is clogged up in their area and 4G LTE is slow. Well, then you're gonna have to deal with the battery drain. But for the rest of us, right, I'm in the New York City metropolitan area, and I'm getting perfectly fast 4G LTE speed. So you think if anybody's gonna be clogged up on the network, unless they have more infrastructure here, I don't know. All I know is that 5G on low power consumption devices just absolutely destroys the battery life. So do yourself a favor, turn it off, and enjoy your TCL 30 XE because it's a perfectly nice device, especially when you consider the fact that it comes in at sub $200. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks for 9,000, by the way. Really cool. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day.